You are listening to the On Purpose Podcast, your guide to living a more purposeful life. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's show of the On Purpose Podcast, where we have an incredible opportunity to sit down with the one and only Benny Voncken, a true champion of living with intention and resilience. Benny is the driving force behind the Via Stocia Podcast, a platform dedicated to exploring Stoicism and its practical application to modern life. He's similar to us in that he wanted more. He changed the trajectory of his life at a low moment and decided like he was going to take charge of his life. And he found Stoicism, which is super interesting to me because as I read on Stoicism and I dabble, like I stay in the space watching what's going on back and forth with Stoicism, and then like we like a lot of meditation and more Eastern stuff. There's a lot of similarities, and I'm excited to get him on the show and kind of break down Stoicism for us, what it means in today's modern world, how we can apply it to our life, and share his journey with you. So before we get to our interview with Benny, I just got to ask that you help us out a little bit. Get over to your favorite podcast apps and YouTube, like, share, comment on our socials, any place you're getting the information, and let us know you're out there. That helps us continue to reach more people around the world. And that's our goal, right? Is not to necessarily be the biggest podcast in the world, but to be the most impactful, the one people come back to week after week because we make a difference in their lives. So help us out by liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting, just engaging with us wherever you're consuming us. And then sit back this week and listen to the interview we have with Benny Voncken. Enjoy the show, everybody. Benny, my newest friend from around the world, welcome to the On Purpose Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Jerrod, and thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Dude, I love it. And I really love talking to people that are on the other side of the world that have already lived like the next 6 hours that I get to live, so you can tell me like how good a day it's going to turn out.
My day's been turned out pretty well. I've been having some good work with ChatGPT and some things on the website. Just like fiddling around with that for 6 months, for not 6 hours, but maybe 4.
Yeah,
So
I love it.
it's
You like ChatGPT.
it's amazing what it can do. I'm building the website myself, and before you had to go and ask developers or everything, and now if I just want to change some things, even if I want to get into some bigger projects, I just go and I write code and all that stuff. So it's good for research. Oh, definitely, I like it.
Yeah, I was skeptical at first, but I'm an adapter, man. I'm a learner, and honestly, sometimes AI is like the best worker I have every day.
Oh yeah, if you know how to use it well, and there's obviously some ethical questions about how we use it, and I also write a blog. I do use it for research, and sometimes you just can't have those mental blocks. It's like what I got to write, so you just have it help you. But I think if you use it the right way, it's a super great tool to just get you ahead, especially if you're building something by yourself and and the big noise and everything that's online. You have to use the tools that you can use.
No, and I love it because it frees you up to do the things you really like doing.
Oh yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
favorite thing about it is I don't have to spend time doing stuff I don't really enjoy.
And you can learn so much more, about the website, the SEO, all of that stuff, and a lot of the things you don't really know, you need to go to an expert, and he can just sit with it and ask questions. And the great thing about ChatGPT, doesn't get tired. You can just keep asking questions.
He never calls it sick either.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
All right.
It's
Well,
always positive. I sometimes have to tell it, just give me it straight. How dumb am I? And it's like, no, you're doing good.
hey, all right. Now here's a weird question. Do you talk nice to your AI?
Of course, you got to keep them as a friend.
I do too, man. It's like my little person. I ask them how their morning's going.
Oh yeah. I was like, hey, great job. You got to make sure that that you're on the good side. You never know what's going to happen.
All right, Benny. Well, I love ChatGPT. I love AI, and I love using it to get us ahead. But that's not why I brought you here, my friend. I want to
Okay.
learn about Stoicism and how we practically apply it in modern life. And that's kind of what brought you across my radar. And I was really excited about it because I'm always fascinated when we try to kind of steer our future by looking to the past. And I think a lot of times we miss that because we want to erase our past or pretend our past didn't happen instead of learning from it. And that's really what Stoicism is, right? That's been around forever.
Oh yeah, and maybe even the steering our future part, that would even be out of our control, right? Because the Stoics are very big of what is in our control and what isn't. It's more like, what can I do in the present that is the best
Mm,
for me and the people around me, right? And then the future will unfold itself, and the past, as you said, is it's already gone, but we can still learn from it, but without kind of having that attachment to it, without it being like an anchor dragging us, or keeping us from moving forward, and at least it can help us grow. So that's where Stoicism really comes into use. If you really do the work, right? Because
right.
again, at the offset, it's all real nice to read all these books and to do the self-help courses and whatever. But if you then just put it in the cupboard and don't do anything with it, then what's the use of it?
Yeah, and and that goes for a lot of things, but I think I like how you said that, right? Any kind of philosophy, any kind of approach to whether we're doing meditations, visualization, sitting with our day, it works. It's work.
Yeah. It's hard work, right? It's like, and this is something that you see online a lot. You see, I like quotes and everything, but again, you can read them, but if you don't really grasp the meaning behind it, then you're missing on so much valuable wisdom that you can use. And then if you put the hard work in, it really changes your life. I've seen it change my life in so many different areas, and it's just a great thing. And also, like, this is not a call for people. I don't want to turn people into stoics. If they do, I'll definitely help them on their journey, but
Right.
this is more of an inspiration for people to find their philosophy of life, to
Mm.
really find what they're looking for in their life.
Yeah, just to get out of the on autopilot kind of life, right? Where we're kind of on cruise control and we just go with whatever happens that day. We're not taking any control over it or ownership even.
Exactly. Like, and a lot of people talk about, not following the herd. And for many, that means like not having this 9 to 5 job. But for me, that means just thinking about your life, thinking about what you're doing. Because a lot of people, they need a 9 to 5 job because they have priorities outside of that. They say, I want to spend as much time with my family. I want to do this. I want to do that. And the 9 to 5 is perfect for me. Right. So that's not really like you're following the herd. It means like getting outside of that stream of life that we're all supposed to follow, is about thinking about what you want to do and how you want to design your life. Having those questions and those thoughts, that's what really makes you kind of an individual thought center of, in this world that's happening around us.
I love it. Benny, before we get to your personal story, I got to warm you up, man. I'm a big guy on warm ups and stuff. I like to work out and warm up, so I don't want to get too deep before I make sure your muscles and your brain are ready. Are you ready for a warm up, Benny?
I'm definitely, I'm already 6 hours ahead of you, so I'm warmed up, but I'm good to go.
No,
I'm
this is
definitely get
like
some exercises.
this is another midday workout for you. This is a different
Oh
one.
yeah, definitely.
All
Bring it
right.
on.
All right. Sunrise or sunset? Which one you picking?
Sunrise.
Why?
I like the sunrise because I like to start the day in the early mornings, and then you have the day ahead of you. And in the evenings, I like to read a book and just kind of mellow out a little
Mm.
bit. But the sunrise gives me that energy to get started.
All right. And weird question. Do you guys practice the clock changing over there like we do in the US? Spring
We
ahead,
just
fall
had it
back?
last Saturday. Yeah.
Do you like that?
No, not at all.
Right, because now sunrise, at least where we're at in Florida right now, sunrise is like 8 o'clock in the morning. It's like halfway through my day before the sun comes up.
Oh yeah. Well, here it's actually not too bad. We just had my parents and my parents' place at the moment. They had like chicken, and they just had a rooster. And now, obviously, the rooster was waking up early, and now it's 1 hour later, so that's fine. But since I work a lot with people in the US these last couple of weeks, because I think yours changed like what, 3 weeks ago, I
Yep.
think in the US. So those 3 weeks, suddenly everything changes for an hour. I
Yeah.
feel like, okay, I work with people on the Pacific Coast, so it's suddenly 9 a.m. there, it's 10 a.m., and it just kind of messes up with everything.
It does mess with your rhythms. All right, next one. Favorite quote or a quote you live by?
Oh, there's a couple of them, but I think the best one is from Epictetus. Obviously, a Stoic. He says, "Don't wish for things to happen as you want them to happen, but wish for things to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly." It's kind
Oh,
of, accepting fate, accepting things that happen for as they are.
yeah, that's a good one. What kind of song is either on repeat on your phone or stuck in your head?
That's gonna be one from I like from Pearl Jam, Just Breathe. I'll really like that one. But
Okay.
then again, I'm just, I like that kind of era. What's the other song? The Elderly Woman Behind the Counter. I like that one as well from Pearl Jam.
All right. Well,
Right? Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I like all of that kind of music, just kind of to pump it up a little bit.
All right, get you excited. All right, what's a favorite book of yours or what you're currently reading? Either one.
Currently reading, I'm reading the book by Heraclides. There's just kind of like all the quotes and everything from this old philosopher. And my favorite book, well, I like Dune, like the science fiction book, the
Hmm.
series Dune, but also the Isaac Asimov. Like I really like the science fiction books. And then from Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius is the one that I always
Oh
go
yeah.
to.
Okay. If you could have dinner with one person, who would it be and what would you want to ask them?
Oh, any alive, dead or alive, or just
Whatever. It's
anyone?
it's your show, man. Whoever you want to have
Oh,
dinner
okay,
with.
okay. I like to speak to Epictetus, just to kind of, the Stoic philosopher, and like to ask him, like, what's it really like, to live that life that he lives, and because he was the verbal slap in the face to me that I needed when I was reading his discourses, I like to ask him some questions, just kind of sit with him, and probably get some more verbal abuse from him if I, know him a little bit from his text.
Uh,
So,
what is it? Are you feeling warmed up? You seem
yeah,
good.
yeah, I'm good.
What is it about Stoicism that drew you to it? And like, where were you at in your life and how did it kind of find you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when you ever ask this question to people who are working on themselves, it's always when they're like in a lower moment. It's not like people on the top of the hill, they start jumping. I need to work on myself. I need to improve myself. So I was going through a divorce at the time. Break up from a marriage and all of that. And I was dealing with alcohol and how that affected my life. I've been sober for about almost 5 years now. Okay, that's nice.
Nice.
So,
Congratulations.
yeah, thanks. And it's just like all of that was, when you're in that transitional period of your life and you kind of need a guide. And I had a good friend of mine who was showing me all these books. I wasn't really an avid reader before, but since I met him, I was just, eating books up. And at one point, I found a book called Introduction to Existentialism. I diagnosed myself with an existential crisis after the like conversation that I had with him. I was like, I gotta dive deep here. And
Yeah.
and I was reading that book, and they talked about the existentialists, absurdists, like Camus, Epicureans, but also the Stoics. And it's just crazy when you read the philosophy or the way of life that fits you. It just reads like you're reading yourself. It's like a mirror, right? But then the things that you're lacking, they tell you. That's why I said, Epictetus was kind of a slap in the face for me to just wake up and really get to work on this. And so that's where I found it as just like this is me, right? It's the pragmatic approach to life, the living well, and that it's possible to do it. It's difficult, and it's about making progress, but it is possible. And from that moment, I just went deep, deep dive, and can read about it as much as I want and just really learn and talk about it. So that's really when it struck me is like, this is my philosophy of life, and I've got to do something with it for myself and then also to help as many people as I can.
So you're kind of, would you say that was a low point in your life then, coming off the divorce and deciding you were going to give up alcohol?
At that moment, it was definitely a low moment because you feel like your future is kind of falling apart. But when I look at it now, it's one of those best moments that happen, right? I needed that moment to really shape myself and to really pick myself up and to become the person who I am right now. And I'm super grateful for it. So it is difficult. And I've spoken to many people who go through moments like that. It's difficult to see it at that moment, but when you look back, so many people say like that was the best moment in my life, and
Mm.
that's how I look at it as well. It was difficult, and maybe that's why it's so good, that it was difficult, and you have to face yourself and sit with everything and just really work through it. Otherwise, it's just going to repeat itself.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, sitting with yourself and getting honest, because that's one of the Stoic philosophies, right? Is being honest with yourself. You're not
Yeah,
lying to yourself. You're living in truth, right? Truth of the moment, as you talked about, not the
yeah.
past truth and not trying to create a future truth, the truth of the moment. So when you sat with yourself, what was it at that point that you're like, okay, this is the first thing I can work on to change me?
Well, first I set some like practical rules for myself again, not drinking, but also making sure that I was physically fit, going to the gym, all of those kind of actionable things that can give you a little bit of control. But one of
Mm.
the first things that I really tackled is, that sense of being a victim. It was like, oh, look at me, poor me. Why is everything happening to me? And I was always the person who was waiting for things to happen. And then I said, no, if I want to make my life the way I feel I should be living, then I've got to do something about it. And I'm not a victim here. This is not happening because it's me. This is just happening, right? This is not
Yeah.
some personal attack that nature has on me. So that was a really big mindset shift when I realized that, and one of the famous quotes is often attributed to Freud, but it goes like, most people don't want freedom because freedom requires taking responsibility, and people are afraid of responsibility. And I really wanted that freedom of my life, which meant I had to also take charge, and I had to really make the decisions that followed that path that I wanted to go on. So that was one of the biggest steps that I had, just getting rid of that victim mentality and saying, okay, instead of asking why me, is like, why not me, right?
Right.
Everything can happen to everyone, so it can also happen to me. It just depends on how I deal with it. That'll shape my character and define who I will be as a person.
Yeah, I like that, Benny. I like that you started with something simple that we can all take charge of today, and that's our physical health, right?
Mm.
We don't need anything extra today to get up and decide to go for a walk instead of sitting on the couch, or if we're already walking, to try to run instead of sitting. Or so starting with something small that you, like you said, is a controllable, creates a win for you, right? Once you do that and you feel like you win, now you're ready for the next thing.
Yeah. And it's also getting out of those bad habits. Just right after I broke up with my ex, I was going out like, if I drink, like, I don't usually drink when I'm alone, or I don't drink at all anymore. But before, I didn't drink when I was alone. But when I started drinking, I would just go all and out, like blackout drunk. And
Mm.
and I've had a couple of those nights. And I was living in Dubai at the time, and it's not a good place to do stupid stuff when you're drunk. So it was just getting too risky for me, and I didn't want to run any risk. And I woke up one morning looking in the mirror, hungover, not knowing what happened, not knowing where my stuff were. And I was like, this is not going to be my life.
Mm.
So that's where those actionable things come into play. It's like, okay, I'm not going to drink anymore. Let me go to the gym. Let's find some activities that can get me out of this routine, that can get me out of this circle that I'm in. And again, they also help you with that kind of mental aspect, right? It's that cognitive behavioral therapy model where your feelings, your behaviors, and your thoughts, they're kind of connected. So if you change one of them, the rest will also pick up. And feeling physically better and fit will also help you feel better in your mind. And this is kind of where we have, when you have stoicism, you have the lowercase stoicism and the uppercase stoicism. And that lowercase stoicism is more like, oh, you got to be strong, you got to power through, break through all the, just kind of be that brick wall that you hear about with stoicism. And yes, there is a part of like doing the physical aspect, but that's just the start, right? Then you got to get yourself into a right place to do the mental work, and that's
Mm.
the real tough part.
Yeah, that's a good point, because that was one of the questions I had for you, Ben. It was talking about the misconceptions, right, of
Mm.
Stoicism, because I think you're right. A lot of times people hear Stoic or Stoicism, they think like a big, strong person, nothing bothers them, nothing affects them. They just go forward all the time. And almost like, and when I prepared for this, I was like, okay, that's almost like that typical male that suppresses all their feelings, right? That like holds all of it in, and then it's self-destructive at some point later in life. So share with us some of the misconceptions you found about Stoicism and how actually being in touch with your feelings is part of being a Stoic.
Yeah, and most of the time I kind of explain it that it's more of like a Western, more pragmatic version of Buddhism that'll kind of soften the tone a little bit, because the difference of reputations that it has. But it is definitely that a lot of people, and when I speak to people who don't really know much about it, they are always surprised when the conversation goes on a little bit more. It's like, oh, really? It's more about, understanding your feelings, understanding who you are, and then working with them, or at least taking that pause to not react out of the emotions, but then
Mm.
just give yourself that moment. So a lot of the misconceptions are those, right? Where it's just like, okay, I don't feel anything because I just need to power through, right? I just need to push everything aside. I need to keep going. But that, as you said, it'll come back and haunt you at the end because you're not really dealing with what is really necessary. And Stoicism really is a philosophy about living in peace and calm, doing the right thing. And, one of the big topics is anger, right? You can see a lot of things out there on anger. And if you Google Stoicism and you go to YouTube, you see all these like buff men, right, with a 12 pack,
Right.
like muscles here and there. And Marcus Aurelius was physically very frail. Epictetus was, he had a crippled leg and all of that stuff. Seneca had asthma or something, so they were physically not in the best shapes. But it's all about the mind, right? If you want to have that strength, that's that internal sense of strength that you want to have, that fortitude to deal with whatever comes with you in the right best way. And so for me, outwardly, those two people might not look very different, but one would look a lot more cheerful, right? One would be far more joyous because you can focus on the positive things in life and really enjoy what you're doing, while the other one would be more cramped up, fully, using willpower to stay in that mode. And
Yeah.
willpower is like a muscle. At one point, you got to let go. And when that happens, you don't know what the results are.
No, that's a great analogy there, Benny. You mentioned joy, and I wouldn't say joy is something you hear commonly associate with Stoics. Joy. How is it that by living a disciplined life through thoughts and physical well-being that you are able to find joy, or that you think you can find joy there?
Because that's really connected with gratitude, right? If you say, I'm going to live in the moment, I'm going to focus on everything right here, you also want to cultivate a sense of like, everything that I have right here is enough, right? I don't need to go and chase all those wants and those desires around me because that'll make my life complete. No, your life is complete here. So what Stoicism really is after is this term that they call eudaimonia, the state of the good spirit. That's where if you really live, according to virtue, and if you really live in accordance with your nature, you will find that everything will be in line with who you are as a person and also how you fit in society as a whole, right? Those two are very interconnected. So once you really reach that state, you will see that everything is good the way it is, right? So even those difficulties, you will welcome them because they allow you to become better. They allow you to test yourself and to say, okay, where do I still need to work? And then you can really cultivate that sense of gratitude of like, I'm here right now and I'm good, I'm happy about where I am right now and I'm kind of flourishing, right? Virtue is often of arate, which is virtue, which is obviously is often translated as that, but it really means excellence, to be yourself, the best version of yourself. And that's something that will give you joy. I think even if you're in a job that you don't really like, but you do your best at the task anyway, you will feel a sense of pride. You will feel a sense of, okay, I've at least accomplishment, right? At least I've done something good. I might not be in a job that I like, but at least let me do my task properly. And you will feel, yeah, you'll feel accomplishment. You will feel good about yourself. And that's kind of that joy, what we're looking for. It's not that happiness that comes from externals, but more of a good feeling that comes from within.
Yeah, that's great, right? Happiness is an external result of usually something that took place, but joy is internal, that you can find anywhere.
Exactly. No matter what the circumstances are, and even if you are ill or something, you can still be the person, the best version of who you need to be, right? You are struggling with something, and even if other people are ill, like I read a story about someone who was, the kid had an illness, right? And it's like, how can I deal with this in the best stoic way? And say, well, I'm the father. Let me be the best father that I can be, right? It is difficult for all of us, but I still have a task to perform. I still have a duty to perform. And from that sense, you can still feel some kind of comfort that you can still do those duties and tasks that you have.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting, right? Because the more you dive into philosophy, a lot of them are very similar, whether they're Eastern philosophies, Western philosophies. A lot of it's about getting to know yourself, laying out what it is you want to have in life. Like, what is your life going to look like? And then being disciplined enough to stay there.
Yeah, and it's finding that, again, one big part of the Stoic philosophy is, well, virtue and living in accordance with your nature, right? Who are you? And that's another critique that Stoicism gets, that it's really selfish, right? It's all about you. But at the end of the day, that's the only thing you can really control, right? That's the only, and from there out, you can then influence the people around you, the society, to get that better, because everybody deserves the best version of you, right? If you're doing things that are against your nature, you're not really reaching your full potential, then no one is getting better of it, right? But if you are yourself, your honest self, your true self, and using all your skills to your best capabilities, then we're all going to benefit. So at the end of the day, that's really like intertwined, those two, the self and the world around us.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. And I've had that discussion with many people that in order to be selfless, I have to be selfish, right? In order to show up the best I can for Benny today, I got to be the best I can for me today.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's what it's, and it's that old airline adage, where you first put on your own mask, oxygen mask, and then put it on the other person.
Yeah.
That's really what it's about. Because again, I can't, even if I want to change you, I can't do that, right? If I'm working with someone, I say, this is what you've got to do. Well, first they have to make that decision that this is the best thing for them to do, right? As we said with the self-help books, you can read all the books you want, but unless you are ready to make those changes and apply them, then nothing's going to happen. So, but what I can do, I can set the best example. For example, I've quit drinking alcohol. I've had many people come to me, it's like, oh, I wish I could do it. It's like, okay, well, it's possible. I did it. And some of them, they've actually tried and experimented with it, and I've gone that way as well. And I haven't said anything to them. They just saw the right example, right? So they
Right.
see this person is living well, in my opinion. Let me see what they're doing. Let me see how they are evolving and making progress. So a lot of the times we want to instruct people what to do, but the best way is just to do it ourselves, and then people will kind of flock towards us.
Yeah, you'll attract the people that are moving that same direction.
Exactly. And that's what we want to build, that kind of attraction to the good life.
Right. But in order to do that, we got to know what we want and where we're headed.
Yeah. And that's a difficult task, right?
It is, especially, I don't know how old you are, Benny, but you're similar age, like similar generation. So many people that I know in my circle kind of maybe same thing, like, oh, I would love to do what you're doing in life. I would love to do this, but they just feel stuck. And a lot of times they're stuck only because they don't know what they really want or where they want to go.
Yeah, and that's the first part. You got to get your priorities and values straight. Like, what do I want to do in my life? And our time is limited. And a lot of the time, people are working towards, the same kind of trajectory that we have been imposed upon us from when we're young. You go to school, you go to work, you get a family, you get a car, you get a house, you get all these things. But then life happens, and suddenly one of those things falls apart. And what are you going to do with yourself? And or you've reached all of those things and suddenly you look in the mirror, it's like, who am I? And so that's where the people are not asking those right questions, like, who am I? What do I value in life? How do I want to spend my time? What do I want to do? Like, I was working in Dubai. I've lived there for 5 years. I was an educator, then I worked as an assessment writer. I was writing the exams, great job, good place. But I was sitting in the office and going there every day. And it's like, what am I doing? Am I here to just make the money and all that stuff? So I set a plan for myself. And at one point, I just quit my job and I sold everything. Now everything fits in my backpack. And I don't really have a place where I live. Like, I'm at my parents now, but I was just in Spain a few months ago. Last year, I was in South America. So this is what I want to do with my life. And I figured, I will find ways to make money and do where I need to. And if I it can make, just keep myself afloat or just live well, that's all that I need. And a lot of people, as you said, are stuck in that kind of ideas, like, I've got to have this, right? And they're comparing themselves with others and feel like, oh, if they have more than me, then I've got to work harder and get more as well.
Yeah. Share with me that part of your journey when you decided to just kind of leave what you had known, the safety and security of what you had known to go into the unknown. What was that transition like for you? How scary was it? And what was the first time where you realized, like, aha, this is my answer?
Well, I worked towards it, like, after I split up, and this was living in Dubai. And Dubai sounds nice, where it's like, oh, my salary is I got more money. As a teacher, I got more money than I've ever had before, right? And I wasn't even on the average pay scale in Dubai, so you can figure what people make there.
Right.
But Dubai is very good at keeping the money there as well, right? They will hit you with credit card loans, they will hit you with everything, just spend it here, right? So a lot of people there are either in debt or they don't have that much money as you ought to believe, right? They live grand, but they live well above their means. So
Sure.
I just went into hermit mode. I just went like those. I was just like, I want to do something with my money. So I started learning about investments. I started learning about how to make it work best. And just, I was reading, I was, writing, I was building, the blog. Before it was called the Stoic Padawan. Now it moved to the Via Stocia blog. So I was building all of that stuff to prepare myself. And as I left, I had maybe the best way to kind of describe it, I had a rental car for 5 years, right? With the idea is like, at the end of the day, I want to go to the airport, give them my keys and leave. And that's exactly what I did. I had a couple of suitcases. I gave them my car and I left. And that was one of those freeing moments. But the good thing is then reality hits, right? It's like, okay, I've got my savings now. Let's see how long this can last, right? So I moved around like as a pet sitter, house sitter. That's what I did in
Mm.
the US and South America, looking after some homes and some animals, which was great. But then he's like, okay, now I've got to start making some money. And that ingrained feeling of like, you've got to have a job, right? This is something, you got to have a job, you got to have a salary, you got to have money coming in, right? So yeah, that works on you. But at the end of the day, you make that decision. You say, this is the life that I want to live. And it's not all rosy, right? There's
Mm.
difficult moments, and that's great. I think that's something that we need, but we all only want to show the good things about how life is. But I've had moments of like, I don't know what I'm doing, you're
Yeah.
just kind of in despair. It's like, what is this? And you just go like, let me just look for a job, let me just get the easy way out. But then you realize, no, that's not my life. So it is difficult, but it's worth it.
Yeah, so there's some good parallels there because my wife and I, we did the same thing right after COVID. We sold a house and a business in Colorado, and we live in our Airstream, a travel trailer, moving all around the country and to Mexico. And what you said there resounds with me because I've had that same thing, right? Like we run our businesses from the road, and there's days where I'm like, maybe I should just get a regular job. Like maybe we need the security. And for me, to fix that, I literally just go out in nature and I walk with like no shoes on and I listen to the birds wherever because we're almost always out in nature somewhere. And then I'm like, no, wait a sec. I would have to give up all this if I went back. And I think sometimes that's the thing that holds people back is just not realizing it's always going to work out in your favor if you take charge, but it will never work out in your favor if you just leave it up to somebody else to decide how your life's going to go.
Yeah, and I think that's the powerful thing, right? Where you take charge. And I love that story, right? Where what you said, in your Airstream riding around, the country and going to Mexico and all those places. How long have you been doing that for?
We're just finishing our 4th year.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, COVID has been like 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
time goes crazy fast. Nice.
Yeah, no, it's been good. Actually, we're recording right now from the Airstream here in Florida. So, but to your point, like sometimes we don't go forward because we're reflecting too much on what was in the past. If I go past, then I know what to expect. I know what I can make. There's a safety and security. So how do we continue to find the courage, if you will, to create our life, not settle for the one we have?
Well, one of the things it's also good to remember that if things really go bad, you can always find a job, right? If you really apply yourself, there's always something that this is something that I've told myself. If I really need to, I can find a job easily that pays money that can keep me afloat, right? Especially because I don't need a lot.
Right.
I think, and that's one of the first things that
Ooh.
people would want to realize. And a concept that I really honed in on is like, what is your enough, right? When
Mm.
are you satisfied? And this is a problem that we have nowadays where we just want more and more and more. And because we have that ever moving goalpost of more and more and more, we can't be complacent about what we have in our job, right? So if you start for yourself as an entrepreneur, you might not get a paycheck every month, right? You might not get the money that you thought you would have. So you're gonna have to make some adjustments to that. And one of the first things is like, okay, I can be satisfied with very little, right? One of the guys I'm working with, Brandon, we made a joke. I was in Panama. He lives in Panama, and I went to visit him a few times, twice the last couple of years. We always make jokes like I can live off elbow pasta, the little
Oh
elbow,
yeah.
the shaped pasta,
Yeah.
and tomato sauce for as long as I have to, if I have to build this stuff. And and that's what I can do. I can just really go to and the other part is like you get so much more value out of life. Again, when I
Mm.
lived in Dubai, people solve the problems with throwing money at them,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh, flat tire, call someone, pay it, and they will fix it for me. But doing it yourself will give you so much more satisfaction and solving your own problems and really, looking into it. You'll learn so much more and you'll feel so much better. And people have kind of forgotten that we have those skills, that we can solve problems and we can go ahead and forge ahead. But so I think that's one of the things, as you said, people get stuck in the safety net, in the comfort of where they are because they are fearful of what's going on
Mm.
outside. But once you step outside, as you said, literally you go out in nature, you'll see there's so much more about it, right? And for me, it's all worth it not having to go into that, daily traffic jam of 9 to 5 going to that just kills me.
Yeah.
And I like to just kind of struggle here, but be outside and say, I'm going to go for a walk now, or get up at 4 a.m. and just, I'm going to do some work now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're trading one for the other, right? Like no matter what kind of lifestyle you live, there's going to be obstacles and problems. And the goal in our day shouldn't be to avoid all obstacles and problems, but how do we handle them as best we can so they benefit us?
hmm And what problems do you prefer, right? What
Yeah,
problems are the ones that for example, when I started investing, because I lived abroad for like almost 15 years now. I'm from the Netherlands, but I lived in Spain and Dubai, and I never really made a pension. I never, because I wasn't anywhere long enough. So there's no pension that really comes
right.
my way. So I had to go and figure it out myself. And I figured, okay, let me just invest some money because I'm already on the track of working for 30, 35 more years. And then if this works out, maybe I can take it easier, right?
Right.
It's only money, I can make it back. So we can make those decisions. It's like, oh, but I make a decision here, and there's going to be consequences. Whatever decision you
Mm.
make, there's another decision you can't make. So you always have to go and learn to deal with the consequences. And that's when we look at having this philosophy of life, it's really important to have your values and priorities set and to decide kind of what person you want to be, because that'll help you in those decisions. That'll help you decide, like, is this the path I want to go? This might not be the easiest decision to make, but it is the direction I want to go, instead of taking the easy way out that leads me away from who I am.
So what would you say to our audience members that are listening? Like, okay, I want to create my values. I want to create kind of my mission statement for my life. What's the first step they do to create that, to sit down and really get clear on, okay, what do I want?
And another, one of the good things there is like, what don't I want, right? We always focus
Mm,
on what do I want, but that is far more difficult to find in all the things that you don't want. So getting those two together is really important,
yeah.
to say, okay, what do I like? What don't I like? What do I want? But for me, it's usually my compass is usually how I feel. Like, do I feel calm when I make a decision? When I have to do something, how does it feel, like some kind of inner struggle? Like, not like the obstacle, like, oh, this is difficult, but do I feel like, there's something wrong about this? There's something off. This doesn't fit well. So listening to that inner voice is really important. But with your values and priorities, you just gotta evaluate all the things that you do. Is this really important to me? Like, if you have a family, okay, I want to spend time with my family,
Yeah.
but I'm working this job that's paying me this. Maybe the things that I have or own aren't as valuable to me as this, as spending time there. So maybe I can scrap this, work less, spend
Yeah.
more time here. So just kind of evaluating all the things that you're doing and saying, maybe a hobby is really important to you, or maybe your work is really important to you, right? You do want to spend it there. So it is all about just listening to yourself and asking those questions like, why am I doing this? What does it mean to me? And then you kind of go pinpoint all the things that you come across in your life.
Yeah. No, I loved what you said there. A lot of times you'll find what you want to do by eliminating what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like you mentioned earlier, you didn't like sitting in traffic, so you know whatever you're going to do next is going to eliminate commutes.
Yeah. Or just at least that for me, it's like following what everybody else is doing. Like, I was working in that office and I looked around and I saw all these guys like me with the same kind of blue tone shirt, with this, and I was like, look at me. And I'm just like, I don't know if you know the Lego movie, but I felt like Emmett. I felt like everything was awesome, but it's just following instructions and doing the same thing everybody else does. And that just isn't me. And I'm
No.
fine, I'm sure it is for other people, right? Because they will find that kind of peace and calm. But if you don't ask yourself those questions, like, is this really me? Then at one point you're going to wake up and you say, like, I've lived my entire life like Emmett, and who am I, right? And I think that that's a waste of a life.
Mm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's one of my goals for myself is at the end of this journey, I want people to be like, man, you lived a life. Like you created a life, you lived it. I want to be scarred up and cut and bruised and battered. I don't want to be perfect going into the end because that means I played it safe.
And that's the great thing about life as well, to just live it and see what it takes. Because even if you play it safe, you don't know what's going to happen, right?
Mm.
And that's where the Stoics really come into play as well. And for example, Seneca, he had a really great quote. He says, you are unfortunate because you have never been unfortunate. You have never had a moment to show yourself and the world what you're capable of. And sometimes you just got to throw yourself off that cliff and say, okay, I'm just going to build a parachute or whatever, see how I land, but at least I'm doing something, and that made me feel alive. And we've got to go and face those challenges, and otherwise there's no growth for us to take at all.
Yeah, and that's so funny, right? Because our growth is in our challenges. Our growth is in the hurdles and the obstacles, and really finding the stories that we'll want to share for the rest of our life usually aren't from our best successes, but our greatest shortcomings. But you got to reframe that, right? Like you were saying earlier, you got to reframe it where it's not happening to me, it's happening to create me, for me to grow.
And that's one of those, you know, again, there's a lot of critiques on Stoicism where the Stoics really work in trying to emulate the sage, right? That wise, perfect person that knows everything. But they are the first ones to acknowledge the fact that they are not that person, right? They're just working towards it. And that's the thing that we've got to focus on to make that progress. But we can only make progress if we know where to work on, what to apply, right? So again, another part of it is that they don't say that there's anything good or bad in life, right? So, for example, it rains for a farmer who hadn't seen rain for a few months. That's a blessing, right? For me, if I want to go out on a walk and it happened to rain on that day, that's horrible because I wanted to go on a walk. But now it shows me that I can work on my perception of like what is good and bad. No, it's just raining. Let me do something else, right? The mindset shift. So again, the same thing can happen, and one person can welcome it because they don't have any issues with it, while the other person is struggling with that part because they are not good at what they're facing. Go right and face it, and then you can grow as a person. And we don't have to be perfect, but we can try to be better at least.
Yeah, no, that's super good. And I like how you said that. Like rain for the farmer is a blessing, and rain for the person going for a walk is they're not happy with it. But it's the same thing, right? Either way, it's going to happen. So we get to frame what do we think about it.
And that's where our really work falls, right? That mindset, because everything happens in our thoughts, right? Our thoughts shape the world how we see, and some people they feel they have these dark thoughts, but we can change them, right? We can say, okay, maybe this isn't the way it is. Maybe my view of reality is different, is distorted because of how I feel and think about the world.
Yeah, and I love that that's what I'd call curiosity, right? When I get to work with people, I always tell them, man, live curious. Like ask, like, why did I meet Benny today? When I saw your name come across my, I don't know, emails maybe. Like, why did Benny choose to email today? Like, be curious about it. There's a reason you and I are supposed to meet. Like, when I leave here and I go on a walk and I cross paths with somebody, ask them how they're doing. Like, there's a reason we cross paths right now. And I just think so many people don't live curious anymore. They just think things are the way they are. But be curious. Like, they're happening for a reason.
I completely agree. I think curiosity is something that is quenched when we are kids, right? We're supposed to follow the rules. We are supposed to, not make any mistakes. As I said, I was working in education in Spain at one point as a teaching assistant, and I was in front of this class and asking the kids questions. I think they were like 6, 7, and this little boy, he raised his hand, he gave the answer, and it was wrong. I was like, okay, that's fine. But then his teacher, right, it's like, why do you answer the question if you don't know it, right? And she was going off on him in Spanish. You could see him kind of shrinking away. And I was like, this is where you destroy a human being, right? This is where you destroy someone who is wanting to answer, wanting to participate, but he just didn't get the right answer. So I just asked him another question. He didn't raise his hand. The following question was like, what do you think?
Yeah.
Right? He's like, I don't know. It's like, what do you think? It doesn't matter if you're wrong or right. Just what do you think? And then you could see him kind of, okay,
Right.
let's investigate. So let's spark that curiosity. And as adults, that's something that we're not allowed to do, right? We're supposed to follow the rules. We're supposed to do all that stuff. And even with other people, we're not supposed to ask, like, hey, how are you doing? No, we keep to ourselves. But I agree, that's where we can really grow as a society together if we understand each other more instead of creating the divide. So, okay, you have a different view on this. Let's see why.
Right.
Maybe there's some truth in there. Maybe there isn't. But let me try to understand what's happening here.
You know what I do, Benny? I assume I'm wrong. Right? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me why. Like, share with me. Maybe I'm wrong on this whole thing. And I think that having a mindset where you don't have to know everything. I don't have to be right all the time. There really is no absolute right because your experience is different from mine. But if I don't listen to your experience, I can't learn from your experience. And a lot of times nobody does that to us but ourselves. We put ourselves in this little box where we're not curious, where we don't ask questions, where we don't examine ourselves for what we want in life, where we're headed, how are we treating the people around us? Are we curious? Are we learning? And that's one of the challenges I give to my community is take ownership of that. Your life is your life. Nobody else is coming to live it for you.
Yeah, and no one is going to give you the answers either, right? No one is going to tell you this is how you're supposed to do it. It's our journey, and this is what Socrates said. Like, I know that I know nothing, right? That what made him the wisest person. And he went around town and was like, because the oracle apparently said that, oh no, Socrates is the wisest person in the world, right? And he's like, how can I be the wisest person? So he went to go and ask people. It's like, oh, do you know about this? And he's like, yes, I know. And then they, prove them wrong. And it's like, well, at least I'm the person who says, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
anything. Let me just learn, right? And if we approach it from that side, and also with our fellow people, right? If we just say, I don't know what this person is feeling or thinking. And this is one of those aspects of Stoicism that is really big. It's about managing our impressions, right? We see the world from all these impressions that we get, and whether we, the first part is like we've got to find out whether it's a true impression. I can sit here and I can think, oh, Jerrod pulled a strange face. Maybe he doesn't like me or something. Well, that's not true, right? So
Right.
my impression is wrong.
Yeah.
But if I base my actions on that impression, then I'm going to do something wrong. But I can say, I can ask, it's like, hey, what happened? Are we okay? Or finding out, yeah, we're good. Okay. Then you will at least find out what the truth is as far as you can tell, right? So that's one of the key things in Stoicism is to first investigate what's really happening around you. Because if we don't know what the truth is there, then we can't make the right decisions based on that. So again, that's where curiosity comes in play to figure out what is really going on around us.
So do you, in Stoicism, do you journal a lot? Do you like take time journaling in the mornings? Is that part of the practice?
Well, if you read the Stoic handbook, that's what we're supposed to be doing. It is one of those practices that people do. I'm not very good at it, although people tend to kind of disagree because I do write like every morning on my Instagram. I just share like it became like kind of a poetry. I kind of, started writing my thoughts, and then I
Yeah.
use a AI Mid-Journey to make a little picture of it, and I put it online because it just helps me kind of formulate my thoughts a little bit more, and I like to play with the words. But it is really kind of like how I kind of reflect and think about
Yeah.
my mornings and in the evenings. But journaling is a big part of all of this, right? Where you can the same with meditation, but journaling is a good tool to reflect on your day. And the Stoics do advocate for that. They say before you go to bed, just check how your day went. What did you do well and where did you go wrong? What can you improve and what will you plan on doing tomorrow to be a better person? So we do need to have those moments to keep ourselves in check and to reflect on how we're doing.
Benny, talk to me about the podcast and what's that been like for you? Because how long have you been running that now?
No, the podcast was a great experience with and this is how we started to kind of, this is how my journey kind of started to take off a little bit more in this sharing and being a content creator. It started from Spaces on X. I don't know if you know them, or like on Twitter, where you have kind of live conversations.
Sure.
That's where I met Bryce and Brendan, and we worked together with on the Via Stocia podcast, and we were having like I think we were having like 2 3 hour conversations on X, like maybe 2 3 times a week, at one point 4 times a week, with a great community. And me and Bryce were like talking in the behind the scenes like for hours afterwards, even about Stoicism. And we was like, we got to do something with this. So we figured, what's the best way to kind of, where we can grow our content and reach more people? That would
Yeah.
be on a podcast. And that's how we started to record, and from there we just kept going. And we've had some really cool guests on, which is really interesting to talk about the books and everything, so from the Stoic world and everything. So that's pretty cool. And for me, it really helped me as an individual. It really helped me to articulate myself better with in the world of Stoicism, and to really profile myself a little bit more of an expert in it. So
Sure.
I've been asked on other podcasts, and I'm going to be teaching the Stoic Week here in the Netherlands, co-teaching that one, which is going to be interesting because I tend to talk about Stoicism in English, but now I'm just like, and then I have to do it in Dutch, and a lot of the vocabulary and the words are kind of stuck in my head as in English. So I'm gonna see, let's see if my brain is able to cope with all of that, So that's a crazy thing. But no, it really helped me personally. But it's just a great journey to share, and we get so many good responses on that as well.
Yeah, and I think it's cool that you did it and how you're talking about it. It's something you enjoy, right? You enjoy talking about it. So, and I think that's what so many people in the world can do is like, what do you enjoy doing? What's the next step to doing more of it?
Hmm. And also, what do you want to like? This is a good question. Like, if you had all the money in the world, how would you spend your time, right?
Yeah,
And for me, it would just be like, even my sister, she makes jokes like she sees me reading like these Stoic books and like you're one of the few people that I can see enjoying like one of those books of ancient people, right? I just enjoy it. I just read. They even it crack me up sometimes, when you read
yeah,
Epictetus. I like him, but no, it's just like doing the things that you can spend hours doing. Like even we talked about ChatGPT in the morning. I'm kind of like I'm not a very good coder or anything, but I like to work on these things and I can go into a project and just bite myself into it and just spend hours on trying to fix it. Maybe a little bit too obsessed sometimes, but that's some things that I really enjoy. And the same with this. So that's where the podcast really came into, sometimes we have to be careful not to go and geek out too much, because there's also people listening, but we just enjoy ourselves.
yeah.
And I think that that's the most important part.
I appreciate it. Benny, it's been awesome having you on the show today. Where can our audience connect with you to follow along in your journey?
Well, the best way is pretty much to go to viastoica.com. That's where they can find all the resources that we have if you want to go into like stoicism a little bit more. But I'm also on Instagram more and I'm LinkedIn. So we're just with, Benny Voncken or Benny_ Via Stoica on Instagram, if I have it right. That's where people
Okay.
can find me. That's where I write my daily little things every morning and every evening. Pretty much 80-90% of the mornings and evenings I write those. And just I share my thoughts. I don't think I'm the most organized content creator out there, but I try to, share my thoughts as much as I can.
Well, I just appreciate you taking that moment in your life to reflect on what did you want to create, how were you going to get there, and then having the courage to share it. Because like we were talking off the air, when somebody leans into their story and doesn't seek perfection to share their story, other people see the value in their stories as well.
And you never know who you're going to influence, right? And you
Right.
never know how you're going to do it. And that's why sometimes people say, well, oh, but this has been said so many times, but maybe you are the right person for
Right.
someone else to say it. And that's when I started my blog about 3 years ago now. I figured, if one person reads this stuff and they get something out of it, then that's great. And besides that, I am also one of those person who gets something out of it because it helps me get my thoughts out, get
Yeah.
them straight. And one of the other things I was always, struggling with criticism, and I figured, what better way to find criticism than to put stuff online,
Yeah.
and that really helped. So I think that that's a good thing. Just kind of share what you feel is important to you in your life, and there's going to be people who resonate with it.
Yeah.
At least it'll help them think for themselves and to see like, oh wait, someone is doing something different. Let me see what I can do.
For sure. Benny, thank you so much for joining us today. We wish you the best, and I can't wait to see where your journey goes, my friend.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on. And I can't wait, wait to see what you guys doing as well. That adventure you're going there with the Airstream sounds awesome.
Thank you so much, Benny.
Thank you. Have a good one.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.